Getting into hiking can seem daunting if you've never set foot on a trail, but it doesn't have to be. Maybe you've seen people scaling insane cliff faces on Instagram, or you've heard the horror stories of people getting lost in the mountains. But the good news, hiking is literally just walking outside. And you can absolutely start hiking no matter what your experience level. You've clicked on the video, so I'm not going to waste your time trying to persuade you to get into hiking. You might be thinking though, how do I start hiking as a beginner? What should I wear on a hike? And do I actually need all of this expensive gear to get started? Well, too long didn't read, you don't need to spend hundreds of pounds to get outside. You also don't need to summit a mountain on your first hike. Everyone deserves to be able to spend time outside, and you don't have to be doing the most extreme hikes or scariest climbs to do it. So how do I start hiking as a beginner? Starting small is absolutely fine, and it will help you build confidence. I actually tackled a pretty scary route recently, and beyond being able to say I survived Críb Goch in horrible 60-mile-per-hour windy conditions, it wasn't really worth it, to be honest. Just watching these back and listening to the wind is genuinely like triggering me. I definitely need a break from anything extreme like that, and I'm only going to be doing chill hikes for the foreseeable future. Sometimes it can kind of feel like a bit of a competition, but really you've just got to remember that being outside is meant to be an enjoyable experience, and if you're not an adrenaline junkie, you don't have to climb mountains. There is so much natural beauty out there, and that doesn't just include mountains. It could be hills, the coast, forests. There's plenty of nature out there, and you don't have to be an expert mountaineer to access it all. So I'm all for celebrating the more low-key, relaxed routes now. So how do you go about it? Well, working out what you want to get from a hike is the first step in picking a trail. If you're a total beginner or have low fitness, it's good to start with shorter, flatter trails. If you've got mobility concerns, canal routes are great because they're pretty much guaranteed to be flat the whole way, and they're usually nicely paved, and you get to look at a canal the whole time. Now, I have a whole video about how to pick hiking trails, so I'm not going to go into too much depth here, but essentially you can use apps like AllTrails to find routes near you that are varying difficulties, lengths, and elevations. Now, full disclosure, I am an ambassador of AllTrails, which happened literally after the last video I posted, but I've been promoting it and recommending it to my friends and family ever since I found it. Personally, I think it's amazing for finding routes and exploring, and I think it encourages people to get out and try hiking. But it's important to remember that apps like this aren't always perfect. Trails can be uploaded by anyone, so they can be mislabeled, outdated, and frankly, sometimes unsafe too. However, it has a great review system, so I always recommend you check the latest reviews and the latest photos before you go out on a trail. This way you can have a better idea of what the conditions are like before you get there. Don't forget to pick trails that you can complete while it's still light outside, especially in the UK during winter because we have like barely any daylight. Starting out with well-maintained trails in parks and nature reserves is a great shout. And while you don't need to be an orienteering expert to start hiking, it's always a good idea to learn some basic map reading skills, so you have something to fall back on if your phone runs out of battery. Okay, so you've picked a trail. What do you actually need to wear hiking? Contrary to popular belief, you don't actually need to spend a fortune to start hiking, and you can probably start with most things you already own. Anything you'd usually wear to work out in is a good start. I'd stick to anything breathable and non-cotton, because cotton tends to take an age to dry, and you want to stay as dry and comfortable as possible when you're sweating and walking up a steep hill. This includes socks because your feet are likely to get wet, especially if you're hiking in the UK. Don't underestimate boggy UK conditions. These ones are merino wool, which are great at keeping you warm even when they're wet, and they dry pretty quickly too. However, any socks that are kind of in a workout range are good because they're literally designed to be more breathable and sweat wicking. Similarly, if you have some lightweight thermals to go under your clothes, those are also great for sweat wicking, and they can give you a little bit of extra warmth, but if you're sticking to hiking in milder weather, they aren't that necessary. Layers, however, are key though. I always pack a lightweight fleece to come with me, and when it's cold, I add in a thin down jacket that I can pack right down and squish into my backpack. Plus, you know, if it's cold, gloves and a hat, but again, these are probably things that you already own. You don't have to get specialist hiking gloves or a hiking hat. Just wear a beanie and some gloves. A lot of the trousers I wear are at least a little bit water repellent, but if you don't have any hiking trousers, just see what you've already got. I wear a lot of cargos in my day-to-day, and a very common ingredient in those is nylon. Ingredient, like it's food. A very common material is the word in those is nylon. And nylon is lightly water repellent, so if you want a little bit of protection, you can go with those. But again, in milder weather, literally just leggings or shorts, like whatever you want to go for. You could also just go for a pair of waterproof over trousers, which literally do what they say on the tin and go over your own trousers or leggings or whatever you're wearing to protect you from the rain. They usually have holes where the pockets usually go so that you can still access your trouser pockets underneath. They usually come with a little packaway bag too, so that if you're done using them and they're all wet, you put them in here and it doesn't make the whole inside of your bag wet from your trousers. And while I would recommend you invest in a good waterproof jacket eventually, if you're planning on just hiking through light showers, you can get away with just getting a little packaway jacket like this one. Exactly the same situation as the over trousers. They have their own little bag and you can just pack them away, whack them in your backpack and then forget about it. I will say though, while that does kind of bring back the costs a little bit, don't underestimate the power of secondhand shopping. Secondhand shops like Vinted are so good when it comes to outdoorsy clothing and gear. When I first started hiking, I got this 2-coat North Face bundle from Vinted for £10 altogether, which included this inner down jacket and the outer waterproof shell. The waterproof shell did need re-waterproofing with some Nick Wax proofer, but that's about £5 for a pretty big bottle, so it's still well under what you can expect to spend for a brand new hiking jacket. Never mind 2 jackets. Honestly, it's a bit of a goldmine when it comes to secondhand hiking gear because people often try to get into hiking or they buy all of the gear for just one trip and then they never use it again. So it's all usually priced really well. So you're sorted for clothes. What about actual gear? Like I said, you don't need to splash out on a ton of gear to start hiking. Just start with the basics, and if you want to add something to make yourself more comfortable or you want to look cooler, you can always just upgrade it later down the line. I've already briefly spoken about getting a good waterproof jacket, but there are 3 other things that I'd prioritize spending money on, and they are hiking boots, a backpack with a hip belt, and a first aid kit. So boots. The first pair of boots that I got as an adult were some £30, I think they're called McLeod boots from Mountain Warehouse, which I believe you can still get actually. They're not waterproof, but they're definitely hardier than my running shoes and comfier than my cargo boots. Hiking boots will give you better grip, ankle support, and some protection from the elements. I'd always recommend you try them on in-store if you can, because then you can have a little go on that fake rock ramp that they usually have, which is actually pretty good for testing grip, but I mainly just think it's fun. But to be fair, pretty much all of my hiking boots I bought online, and I just looked deeply at the reviews, measured my feet, the whole shebang, and I've never had any issues with hiking boot sizing or, I've never had to break them in or anything like that. And that's been the same for, something more expensive like Solomon's versus some like £20 hiking boots that I got from Asda. Randomly, Asda have a hiking range, apparently. I don't wear them to hike in, I just wear them because they're cool. Okay, number 2, backpack. One specifically with a hip belt. I think a good backpack with a hip belt and a chest strap is a bit of a game changer because it distributes the weight of your backpack so much better and massively reduces the strain on your shoulders. It also minimizes the movement of your backpack, so if you're doing anything that involves like scrambling or you just tend to fall down a lot, it can help out your stability massively. Similarly to the shoes, you should also try and get your backpack or day pack, depending on where you shop, in the store. You want to try it on in person with weight in to see how it really feels and how it sits on your back. Usually the more high-tech and expensive the backpack, the more ways it'll have to adjust the size. And so, if you've got a smaller frame, that's something to look out for because most backpacks are kind of designed to fit tall men, which have a very different frame to a lot of people. So always good to see if it's got ways to adjust and different sizes or even a women's version. You should also ideally get your day pack after you've decided what you want to bring with you on a hike. This way you have a kind of idea of what size you want to get. In the summer, I found anything that's around 20-25 litres to be ideal for me. But remember that in winter, you're going to need to pack a few more layers. So you'll be looking at more of like a 30 to 35 litre pack. I also take a camera or two with me, so that's also something to keep in mind. I started out with this one, which I think was £35. One cool feature it has is it has this trampoline back system, so you're always having this airflow behind your back. I've since upgraded to the Osprey Tempest 24 litre, which has a bunch of fun features. But honestly, when the weather's nicer, I'll still be using my 20 litre, £35 pack because I love green and it might go with my outfit better. So just to summarise the backpacks, the best things to look for is the fit, any adjustable features that it has, whether or not it has a hydration sleeve, because that's something that I use. I find it a lot easier to stay hydrated on my trail if I have a water reservoir and a straw, and whether it comes with a waterproof cover. Waterproof covers look like this. Some bags will say that they're waterproof, but I never fully trust that. Some bags come with them, some don't. Something to consider. Now, the last thing, although it should probably be the first thing you prioritise on this list, is a first aid kit. It's one of those things where you think you'll never need it yourself until you do, or someone else on the trail needs it too. You can make yourself one with plasters, bandages, antiseptic, painkillers, medication, a lighter, or you can buy a pre-made one from pretty much any pharmacy or outdoorsy shop. If we take a little peek into mine, I like to add cotton balls, a lip balm, and a lighter, although I think I took that out on my last trip and I haven't replaced it yet, so I will do that. I also keep hand warmers and a thermal blanket in my bag, but they don't fit in my first aid kit. But they're first aidy things, so I'll include that in this section. You can literally get first aid kits for less than £10 and probably even cheaper if you make it yourself. I'm the type of person to keep antihistamines, an inhaler, tissues, anything you can think of in my bag that I would take with me on a day-to-day anyway. So it just makes sense to have a slightly upgraded version in your hiking bag. Now, super speedy run through of things that you probably already have that are also good ideas to take with you on a hike. Sunglasses. Rock on. A bottle of water or a reservoir, you might have to buy that, but you probably already have a water bottle. Snacks, I take sugary and salty snacks with me because they're the kind of things that revive me when I feel a bit dizzy or faint. Lunch, nothing beats getting to sit down and have your lunch for a while. And speaking of sitting down, you probably don't already have this, but I got a pack of 2 for, I think it was like £6. Sit mat. Super light, literally the lightest thing I've ever seen. It just really easily folds away and it saves your butt from getting dirty, muddy, cold, wet. It's just good to have. A spare pair of socks, a map and a compass. You might not have these already. If you have all trails, you can print out maps. So that's really handy. And a head torch. Now, this is probably one of those things where you're like, well, I don't really need to buy that because I'm not going to go out in the dark, which fair enough. But it is quite easy to get caught out, especially in the winter. So if you can get a little torch, doesn't have to be a head torch, I think that's always a great idea to bring with you. Some will say it's essential, some won't. We have torches on our phones, but obviously if you're navigating on your phone, if you're using it for public transport to get there and back, you're going to drain the battery quite quickly. I don't think it's a good idea to add using it as a torch to the list. And so along the same lines, maybe bring a power bank and a cable with you, just to be safe. I know it can be pretty overwhelming as a beginner to see a huge list of things to take with you on a hike, especially when a lot of people on YouTube and social media in general tell you that you need a million essentials to start hiking and you're not allowed to go outside unless you have these 50 things. That can feel so overwhelming that it makes you just not want to try at all. So I just wanted to strip it back and give you what I think are the basics and what you should think about upgrading first when you feel like it and if you get the opportunity to. That being said though, I do have a whole video about what I take with me on a hike in the winter if you're interested, but you know, no pressure. I highly recommend you just get out there and try it. So I reckon you're just about ready to start hiking, but I want to give you a few beginner tips before you get started. 1, be bold, start cold. If you set off on a hike wearing all of your layers at once, you're going to get pretty hot and sweaty straight away, which can actually be kind of dangerous in colder weather. In winter, I tend to just wear a thermal long sleeve top, a breathable t-shirt, and my waterproof jacket on my top half when I first set off, and then depending on the weather, I might add a thin fleece, and then I'll add a down jacket for when I'm stopped sitting and, having a break or eating my lunch. I don't ever really walk with a down jacket on. You might feel differently about that because you might run colder than me. I personally get really cold when I'm stopped and really hot when I'm walking, so it's about finding that balance. But remember, you're going to cool off really quickly when you sit down and have a break. So make sure you've got something extra for those times so you're not just sat getting cold. 2 is stay safe by triple checking the weather before you go and make sure the trail is appropriate for said weather. Like I said, on all trails you can check recent photos to see if the trail is covered in snow, for example. And in the same kind of safety vein, you should also let someone know where you're going and how long you think you'll be, especially if you're going alone. 3 is don't forget to look around and enjoy the view. It's so easy to forget that you're in a beautiful area in nature because you're too busy focused on looking at your feet to make sure you're not falling over rocks. Obviously still make sure you're not falling over rocks, but take every 5 or so seconds to look up at your surroundings. Surprisingly, there are a lot of nice views behind you that you just haven't really looked at. And number 4 is go at your own pace. It's not a race and you don't need to prove anything when you're on a hike. Just enjoy it, take your time, and take as many breaks as you need. Now, I realize I just said a lot for a hobby that's really just walking around, but I want to encourage everyone to get outside more. And I know that I feel more comfortable starting a hobby when I've watched like a million YouTube videos about it. So I hope this helped. You can go and check out my video on how to find hiking trails if you want to. Let me know if you're going to go hiking soon and how it goes. Thanks for watching and have fun. And if you're watching this in the summer, I'm so jealous of you because it's cold and I don't want to go outside.